Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio, and it is Wednesday night, March 3rd, 9:30 p.m. Calgary, Alberta, and I'm happy to be here. And this is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us, and we're on for 30 minutes, and I'm happy you can be here and tune in with me. I appreciate it, and, for all the support and stuff all around the world, and just, for your friendship and support. I just really can't thank you enough. And, I'm excited to be here. We have the last, I don't know how many nights, probably 2 weeks worth now, we've been looking at Survivor to Thriver Workbook, and I found that on www.ascasupport.org. That's ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, a Morris Center program, and it's a great workbook. I'm really getting a lot of good information there, and I hope you're enjoying that too, and I hope that it's helpful for you. If you're an adult survivor of child abuse, it really is helpful. And for those who maybe haven't experienced child abuse but know someone who has, and they're like a supporter of a survivor of child abuse, it's really important for supporters of people who were abused as children to know sort of what goes on behind the scenes in someone's mind who has, in someone's heart, who's been abused, and even with domestic violence situations, it's just so important that everyone sort of, take on the role as a supporter and help, really help somebody out in a time of need, right? So it's so good to just, this education and awareness is so important for everybody, whether, you were abused or not. And that's just the whole issue. I think, the whole society at large really needs to become involved if we're ever going to make a real change and a dent in this thing and stop child abuse and stop human rights abuses, right? We're all going to have to get involved. It does affect us all. And it costs us financially, taxpayers, billions and billions of dollars every year go into, because of child abuse and domestic abuse and all the related issues. And it costs us all, not only in our pocketbooks, but it costs us the people in our lives and the people, down the street and the people in our cities and towns. And these are human lives we're talking about. So, I'm just so happy to be able to do this show. It's not a professional show. I don't have any professional certificates in counseling or therapy. I'm just one person who studies child rights and human rights and international community development at MRU, and I'm in between courses just because I took some time off originally just because I didn't like the work that I was doing, and I didn't feel that it was as good as it should have been, and I was tired, and I thought, okay, I'll take a break from that. And then I lost my job, and I couldn't afford to go back to school for a while. And then I stumbled on Talk Radio and stumbled upon a show that I was listening to, Voices of Hope, Gail Crabtree, and that's kind of what started the whole thing, and which is a great show, by the way, and I hope everybody will tune in and listen to her. She's an awesome advocate for child abuse, child sexual assault, even adult sexual assault. She is awesome, and I hope you will tune into her show, Voices of Hope, on blogtalkradio.com. And she also has a Hope blog. It's the Hope she has a blog. I'll get that information for you. Anyway, she's got some great websites and great information for everybody who needs more information about sexual assaults, victims and survivors of sexual assault, and where to go to get help, and just coping mechanisms, just everything, right? So she's a great lady. And so that's what happened. I just sort of stumbled upon this whole thing and decided to do a show, and that's why I'm here doing this. And, so it's not a professional show. It's not designed to take the place of professional help. I just want everybody to know that. And I hope you all listen at your own discretion. We all know what's good for us to listen to, and we should. And so if it's not something that you feel comfortable with, the topic of abuse is really sensitive for most people. And it's very hard for people to talk about. It's hard for people to think about, let alone talk about. So, and that's the whole problem. It's just been silenced for too long, and it needs to be talked about. But if you're a survivor who's healing and on your healing journey, you don't want to trigger, you don't want to be triggered and relapse, and kind of be pushed back in your healing process. you really want to just keep moving forward at a very steady pace. And that's what this Survivor to Thriver workbook is all about. The first 34 pages are developed are there just on safety first, and just talking about how we all need to be in a safe place when we're going through this workbook, how important it is to have someone with you if you're not prepared to do it on your own, and just to have that support system, right? So important. So even with this show, you want to make sure that if it's a topic that's going to bother you, please turn it off, because it won't hurt my feelings at all. And if you're a young person listening to the show, make sure you have someone who's older who can help you with the questions that you might have, and also just to see if it's something that you should be listening to, because the players are now who I don't know where the players are anymore, and I just don't know who's listening anymore. And so this show is really it's about child abuse. It's for children ultimately, but it's a lot of adult material. And so that's why I think children, you should definitely have someone listening to this with you, an adult caregiver, a parent, which I just pray and hope that you have a parent who cares and really wants to, to be there for you and know what you're listening to so that they can help you, right? It's just so important. And so I just hope someone in your life will do that for you. And yeah, we'll just get started with the show. We had it was Monday night, we were talking about emotional abuse, and there's 5 types of behaviors involved in characterized by 5 types of behaviors: emotional abuse: rejecting, isolating, terrorizing, ignoring, and corrupting. And I'm just reading right from this page. This is at www.ascasupport.org if you want to go there and pull up that Survivor to Thriver workbook. That's a great website, and there's the workbook is right there. It's for everybody. Anybody can get a hold of it. It's not it doesn't cost anything. It's free, and that's why I thought I'd take a look at it. And it turned out there's some really good information on here, and that's why I wanted to share it. I'm not sharing all of it because there's 115 pages, but we're just going through the first part. We went through safety first, and then we went through child abuse, and then we went through child sexual abuse, and now we're going through emotional abuse, and just reading, from the page. So I did start emotional abuse Monday night, and we actually read most of the first part of the actual Survivor to Thriver workbook on emotional abuse, and they were saying that it's really hard it's really hard to know what is emotional abuse. It hasn't quite been defined. There are certain things that are characteristic of emotional abuse, but they said, in court it's really quite hard to prove emotional abuse because it doesn't leave scars. It's harder to prove, right? So, but it is a real form of abuse, and it's horrible. It involves rejecting, terrorizing, ignoring, isolating, and corrupting, and that's just the ones that they have listed here. So we read rejecting on Monday night, and that's rejecting involves the adult's refusal to acknowledge the child's worth and the legitimacy of the child's needs. Children experience rejection and abandonment when parents act in ways that minimize the child's importance or value. During infancy, this may involve not returning the infant's smiles or misinterpreting crying as manipulation. It just kind of goes on to talk about rejecting, and that's just really a horrible abuse to reject a child. It's just not good at all. It leaves emotional scars that can last a lifetime, right? And it's horrible. Terrorizing. We'll read right from the page. I'll just start out with terrorizing. Terrorizing includes verbally assaulting, bullying, or frightening the child, thereby creating a climate of fear that the child generalizes to the world at large. Terrorizing usually involves threatening the child with some kind of extreme punishment or dire outcome, one that is clearly beyond the child's ability to respond or protect him or herself. The end result is that the child experiences profound fear and is left to her or his own psychological imaginings. Examples of terrorizing vary according to the child's age. During infancy, the parent may deliberately violate the child's tolerance for change or intense stimuli by teasing, scaring, or engaging in unpredictable behavior. As the child grows older, the terrorizing may take the form of verbal intimidation, forcing the child to make unreasonable decisions, such as choosing between competing parents, constant raging at the child, or threatening to expose or humiliate the child in public. In families that practice strict religions, fundamentalist and other sects, children can be terrorized by parents who put the fear of God in them or threaten them with the devil's wrath should they not behave. So that's a it's a serious form of emotional child abuse, and or even it can happen in domestic abuse and domestic violence situations as well. People, terrorize people, and it's terrible. But when terrorizing a child is just horrible, and it can leave a lifetime of scars, emotional scars, that people don't see on the outside. But what's going on with that child on the inside, and then they grow up, then they take all this stuff with them into their adulthood if they don't get help. And that's why I'm so big on saying, reach out and get some help, whatever help it may be. Just make sure you do keep reaching for it, because we all, really need to know that we should have a good life, that we did not deserve to be abused, and that there is help out there for people, right? So important. Here's the next one, ignoring. Ignoring entails depriving the child of essential stimulation and responsiveness, thereby stifling emotional growth and intellectual development. Ignoring refers to the condition in which, due to excessive preoccupation with their own issues, the parents are emotionally unavailable to the child. In contrast to rejecting, which is actively abusive, ignoring is passive and neglectful. Ignoring behaviors include not responding to the child's talk, not recognizing the child's developing abilities, leaving the child without appropriate adult supervision, not protecting the child from physical or emotional assault by siblings or friends, not showing interest in the child's school progress, and focusing on other relationships, such as maybe a new lover, to the point that the child feels displaced. Emotional neglect may be the most common type of abuse, but it may also be the least reported, right? It's so hard to prove it, and for many reasons, people, they don't see that there's any bruises on the child, or they don't see, maybe the child shows up looking great every day, clean clothes and all that, right? So, and there's no bruises or anything, but maybe you just think the child's shy or something, and that's why they don't interact as much or something, right? And a lot of times kids are going through a lot of emotional abuse that you just can't see, and but if you're able to take a look into that child's world, we might see that there's emotional abuse going on. So it's really important to know the signs of all the different types of child abuse, right? The next one is isolating. Isolating involves the adults cutting the child off from normal social experiences, thereby preventing the child from forming friendships and reinforcing the child's belief that she or he is alone in the world. Isolating the child from normal opportunities for social relations is another form of emotional abuse, because it impedes the social development of the child. Included here are efforts by the parents to put the child at odds with friends, presenting outsiders as an object of suspicion, reinforcing the child's concerns about peer acceptance, and thwarting the child's attempts to be industrious and self-sufficient. Specific behaviors that tend to result in isolation are preventing children from seeing family or friends, preventing receipt of appropriate medical care, punishing the child's social overtures, rewarding the child for avoiding social situations, and prohibiting the child from inviting other children home, withdrawing the child from school, and preventing the child from joining clubs or dating. Because children tend to become more socially active as they get older, it is far easier to seclude a young child than an older one. Families that are members of strict or closed religious groups may be especially prone to isolation, and have been known to keep their children out of school because the outside world so conflicts with their personal beliefs and values. However, there are certain religions which de-emphasize and even prohibit certain contacts with the outside world, especially those involving doctors and medical procedures. In these contexts, the isolating behavior does not necessarily constitute abuse. If you grew up in this kind of atmosphere, there may be an explanation for why your family engaged in isolating behaviors. Isolation is also common in families where father-daughter incest exists. In these cases, the father wants to keep the child at home to preserve his access to her and to limit the possibility that she will tell someone about the incest. Many times, incest comes to light only after several years, when the girl, now a teenager, tells somebody in her peer group what has been going on at home. So that's just terrible, and that's just the thing. Isolation happens even in domestic violence and domestic abuse situations, right? Because the abuser is always trying to isolate and control their victim, right? Which is, generally their child or their wife or husband, right? So it's really bad, and it's a major form of abuse, and it's so sad that so many people are suffering with this right now. And if your life is in danger, and you think if you have any suspicion that your life is in danger or your children's lives are in danger, you have to make the phone call. You have to get yourself to safety. I cannot stress that enough. and your children are counting on you, so you make sure that you do the right thing. And if you're in an abusive relationship, but you're not, you don't feel that your life is being threatened, it's so good to get support. Make sure you reach out and get some help from a counselor, a domestic violence counselor, someone who specifically knows what you're going through. And if you know a child who's being abused, or if you even suspect it, even have the slightest inclination, just even a tiny twinge of a thought, it's better to make the call and save a child's life than just to say, well, I could be just thinking this is, that this child's being abused. Maybe they're not. And, do you really want to wake up and find out that, read in the paper 2 weeks later that child's been murdered at the hands of their caregiver? It's so important. And, really honestly, so much abuse is not reported, and look how many kids are winding up dead, and babies, precious little babies, murdered at the hands of their parents and caregivers. And I tell you, if somebody would have made the call, we could save some of these child's lives. And it's so important that we do the right thing, and that is to stand up for these children who have no one to stand up for them. And because quite obvious that the family's not going to report it. So if we suspect anything is going on in a home where there's children, you have to make the right choice and make the phone call, because I seriously doubt that they're going to be removed. I mean, I know it has happened. There's cases where it does happen, where by mistake they remove some children, but I know it's not that many. They go in, they assess the situation, and if they feel that the child is in danger of further abuse, they will remove the child, and thank God. And hopefully they won't go on to be put into some sort of another horrible situation. We know it's not a perfect situation. I mean, anybody who knows and pays attention to what's going on in the paper and sees what's going on the news and reads some of these survivors' stories, really, we know that it's not a perfect system, and there's a lot of work to do. That's why I'm on Blog Talk Radio talking right now, because I'm saying we have to come up with the answers. We have to change this. The systems that are in place they're trying really hard to make a difference and save children's lives, and in the meantime, there's so many children still dying and still being abused, and it's just, we have to come up with some answers. We really do, and I'm not saying it's just you. I'm talking me, you, and the world, right? We need to change this thing. Corrupting, that's the next one. Corrupting involves encouraging the child to engage in antisocial behavior that reinforces deviant social attitudes. Most frequently, the corruption has to do with suggesting inappropriate ways of handling aggression, sexuality, or substance abuse. By encouraging antisocial values and behaviors and discouraging the learning of positive social attitudes and skills, the parents hinder the child's social development. Sometimes a child evolves an identity that puts him or her at odds with the conventions and standards of society. Some examples of corrupting behavior include reinforcing the child for sexual behavior, condoning drug use, rewarding aggressive behavior, exposing the child to pornography, and involving the child in criminal activities such as prostitution, drug dealing, or insurance fraud. Another example is parents who force their racist or exclusionary attitudes on their children and encourage them to act on those beliefs in ways that cause problems for them with peers, at school, and even with the law. And so this is horrible. We know that it happens. Children, they're like little sponges, and they pick up and learn, in their environment, right? So whatever their environment is, that's what they're going to learn. And, I know this is going on because it went on in my own family. All of this went on in my own family, and, it was very hard to deal with, right? We have to go to school and sit there, and, you just feel different. It's like your thinking is different, and you're listening to a group of, somewhat normal people, but then you have to go home and be involved in abuse, right? And so it's hard on kids, and even emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is probably, it's just as hard, if not worse, than physical abuse, because emotional abuse is harder to get over because it leaves deep scars, and that are really not noticeable but are there, and they are really extremely hard to get over, and to be able to move past them, right? Whereas physical abuse, a scar tends to heal, but it's the emotional abuse behind the physical abuse, right? It's the emotional horror and just the daily abuse that actually just wears a child down, and then they grow up and they become adults, and then if they don't get the proper help, they're just going to continue on in this horrible, I call it hell that's been created for them, and it's horrible. That's why I say just make sure you reach out and get some help. It's so important. Find a group of people that can support you, a child abuse group. I belong to quite a few, and there's lots of good groups out there that you can just sign up for and be a part of, and these people know where you're coming from. They might not know exactly because everybody's situation is a little different, but the thing is they know what it's like to suffer child abuse, and they know what it's like to have that pain in your heart, and that just eating at you. And so then they want to get well themselves and are walking through their healing journey. And so they're always happy to reach out their hand towards someone who's on that journey too, because everybody's like, we're going to pull each other along. We're going to make it. And I mean, it's so important. It is. I can't stress it enough. You got to find people that can support you positively in your life. Get around people who are willing to back you and be there for you. Right? It's so important. They have questions here, journal questions that we're supposed to answer. That's part of what this workbook's all about, in the privacy of your own home, with a friend or with a counselor or therapist that you really trust. You can go through these things. You can write the questions out and talk to a counselor or therapist while you're doing it. Or if you have a really good friend who's been there for you, supporting you along the way, they can help you as well to fill out the questions. And I'm going to do it on my own because I'm okay enough to do that. But they did stress in the Safety First part, which is the very first chapter of this Survivor to Thriver workbook, to make sure that you know where you're at in your healing and whether or not you should be going through the book by yourself and the workbook, because it can trigger and it can cause a lot of emotional pain to come back. And they said you don't want to go regressing back into, you don't want to regress on your journey of healing. You want to go forward, but it should be a very steady, kind of slow pace, at your own pace, and not rushed. And so that's why it's very important to know where you're at in your healing. And I recommend that Safety First chapter just for anybody, even if you don't want to go through the whole book, anybody who's survived abuse of any kind, to go through that very first chapter called Safety First. And because I found it very interesting, they actually ask you questions to see if you really are safe enough to be doing this workbook. And the outcome of the questions, however many you answer yes or no to, will actually tell you whether or not you should be going through the workbook by yourself or maybe in a group. The ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, is a Morris Center program, and they have international self-help support. It's an international self-help support group program designed specifically for adult survivors of neglect, physical, sexual, and/or emotional abuse. And they have in different cities around North America. They have community-based, provider-based, web-based self-help support groups that people can get in on, and you can work through this Survivor to Thriver workbook in these groups, and that's what they suggest. And they said that if you don't want to join up with ASCA, or if there's not one in your own community, then you can find a therapist or a counselor that you see that you really has done some good work with you, and you trust them, and they want to help you, and you can go through the book with them, or they said with a good friend, somebody who's just always been there for you and is wanting to help you in your healing journey. So yeah, it's a great thing. So here's the journal questions. I'll read these out. Did your parents frequently rant and rave about what a horrible, stupid, or ugly child you were? And question number 12, this is where they start on 11 and 12. Did they involve you in some illegal activity? Question 13, did your parents prevent you from having friends? Question 14, did they refuse to take you to the doctor when you were sick, absent religious constraints, right? Question 15, would they frequently ignore you by refusing to speak or listen to you? Question 16, were you left alone for extended periods of time before the age of 10? Question 17, did your parents make you stay home from school to take care of brothers or sisters? And question 18, would they threaten to leave you or kill you if you did not do what they said? And question 19, did they often make disparaging comments about men or women and predict that you would grow up to be just as bad? And question 20, would your parents sabotage your efforts to succeed at school, sports, work, or relationships with friends? And it says here, after reading this section, you have some guidelines as to what constitutes physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. Now you can use this knowledge as a standard to determine what actually happened to you. If you have some memories that you determine were abusive, write them down in your journal. See if you can add the fine details to give a more complete rendering of the experience. Jot down all thoughts, feelings, associations, and images that are evoked by this memory. And if you have no or few memories from the past, you may still need more time to remember, or you may not have been abused. If you weren't in fact abused, you don't want to get caught up in the feeling that you must have been. If this is the case, consider yourself fortunate. So it's quite interesting, I just think. It's quite interesting for sure. My sister doesn't have very many memories of the events that went on in our house, and it's some of them she does and some of them she doesn't, and I know specifically that she was there, and so I think she blocked a lot of stuff out, and she's still working on. Maybe she doesn't want to remember it. I don't know, but I remember a lot of stuff, and I kept my memory very good, for that very reason, because it was really my safety mechanism. If I could keep my mind sharp and keep my mind aware of what was going on, I felt a lot safer than just being in a cocoon. Because I was always on the lookout, because our house it was a dangerous place to be in our home. Not every day, but there were times when things would just get out of hand, and that's when I just found it very helpful to be on the ball and be paying attention and know what was going on. And maybe just the shock of being born into a home that was so I don't know, just chaotic, and a lot of crisis and a lot of illness and depression and anger, and it really caused me to be on the lookout. I think that's probably more what it was. It wasn't probably a conscious decision, but later on, I did still remember a whole lot of stuff that went on, and there's a few things that I don't remember, but most of it I do. And, most of this stuff my parents were responsible for, especially ranting and raving at each other and at us children. And it was kind of that could be a daily occurrence. And, ranting and raving in the middle of the day, middle of the night, morning, didn't matter. That was just something we grew up with, and it was hard, And just, lots and lots of that stuff I experienced. And I know there's so many people out there who have. And I think Friday night we're going to take a look at what are the adult repercussions of child abuse, relationship problems, that's the one part right there, low self-esteem, that's another part, and we'll see how far we can get through that article, self-sabotage, and then we'll continue on from there. So the adult repercussions of child abuse, that's for Friday night. We have a couple minutes left, and I just hope that you will reach out and get some help. And I just can't stress it enough. It's so important. And I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and I'm so happy to stand with them. I say this on pretty much every show. That's because that's the truth. And just the website is awesome, and the work that they're doing, it's all about education, awareness, and prevention, how to report child abuse, what are the signs and symptoms of child abuse, and all kinds of resources on their website as well. You can go on there and you can find out all the local, in your area, sort of in your state, especially in the United States there, you can find lots of resources and phone numbers and contacts, right, for child abuse-related issues. And it's such a great website, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. And there's it's just very healing. I know when I first saw it, I actually kind of thought maybe it was just made for me. My tears came to my eyes when I saw that website, because the founder and CEO and founder, Sandra Potter, and then the president, Donna Shear, best-selling author and president Donna Shear, the two moms on a mission, they touched my heart, and they still do. And I just know that there's so much good work being done by this organization, not-for-profit organization. I'm so happy to be able to add my voice to theirs and just say, we have to we have to find the answers. We really do, and help perish a child's nightmare. And so I hope you'll check out the website. It's really good. There's a free PDF download on the website. It's a Child Abuse Handbook, and you can download that for free. And I did, and there's so much good information on there regarding every aspect of abuse, really. And then all the references and resources are there as well. So it's a great handbook for people who are wanting to learn the signs and symptoms. And you can study it in the comfort of your own home after work or whatever. You can take a look through there and find out how to report child abuse. It's so important to know how to report it. And you can mess up a case if you don't report it properly. And so there's just so many important factors to this. And you never know when a child's going to come to you and disclose that they were abused. You just don't know. It could happen. And that's the big part. We could save a life, and that's my mission. And to get involved and save children's lives, and get them out of their abusive environments. And really, what would be best is just prevention and get some help. Get some help for these parents out here who are struggling and who are abusing their children. And I mean, it's just horrible. The whole thing just really has to stop. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll be back on tomorrow morning, 5:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, for one child abuse survivor to another. And you're all in my heart. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great night, everybody. Take care, okay? Bye-bye.